There's definitely a period of days within the week that I'm not as prepared, or I realize, oh crud, I should have done that last night. But for the most part, I know what's going on. I know where I want these students to be at. During the summer, kind of made an outline of where I wanted the students to be at for each quarter, and that's been a great pacing guide to follow. But there's always something that comes up that I'm not really sure how to handle, or I wish I would have been more on top of. It's a lot of different factors that go into teaching other than just preparing a lesson plan. I would say that's probably 5% of it.
Something that I hope I will learn over the first year of teaching is really just gaining confidence in my teaching. That's something that I really hope to grow and foster in, is just, telling myself I can teach all these math skills and I can, help these kids succeed not only on their tests, but in life as well.
Right now you feel like sometimes you're like, oh my God, what am I doing up here? I don't know what I'm doing. And you'll think what's in my lesson plan? I'm getting better at shifting things around and not following a strict schedule, but then making sure I still get everything done. I feel more in control.
It feels like just yesterday I was starting, but then at the same time, I feel like I've been doing this now for a year. Now that I've gotten in that groove, I'm like, so this is what I can expect. And actually that's kind of just become my new challenge. I've made it this far, now how do I keep fighting these battles?
Helping new teachers is all about making sure they succeed. And our staff takes that incredibly personal. It's our responsibility to make sure they're successful. If a new teacher is not successful in our building, it's not their failure. It's our failure to find what type of support they needed in order to be successful.
They've been very helpful, and when they asked me to come to them, I knew that they were just ready to help, and so I had a chance to explain the situation of I don't only have 1 or 2 kids that need a lot of help. I have a handful, and they were eager to listen and eager to help.
We have a lot of unofficial support systems in place for our new teachers. We make it look like it's just random, where it's actually pretty strategic. Who's going in, depending upon what type of modeling that new teacher needs, because every new teacher is different. All of their needs are different. So for some of them, I need to have somebody going in their room for support that's going to temper them, calm them down, get their anxiety down. For some of them, I need firmness. While everything, I think, looks to the student teacher to be pretty randomly selected, from the office perspective, it's all pretty strategic.
This quarter has flown by. There have been ups, there have been downs. There have been parent meetings that have gone really well. There have been parent meetings that I have left in tears on my way home, and I'm just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do as a teacher. I don't feel qualified for this job. Definitely have felt that.
So Monday comes around, I've planned Sunday, I've gotten my stuff ready for my students to experience what I had planned, and it just didn't go well. It just didn't go well in every sense of the way. I'm giving you one right now. My students were clearly tired, everybody was just exhausted, and you could tell when it came to the lesson because the students did not grasp from it what I hoped they would. I left that day feeling very, very disheartened.
The self-doubt is something that it just creeps in. Even when you know you're doing the right thing, or in your heart you're doing the right thing. And I think that's why you really need to surround yourself with the positive people that can help bring you up, can help carry you through some of those hard times, and just keep reaffirming that this is really what you need to do. Teaching from textbooks, teaching on paper seems way easier than it is in practice, because when you look at here's the best way to do this lesson, you don't think necessarily of the personalities that can throw that lesson off. And having the ability to adapt and think on your feet is something that you have to learn. Just how you pick yourself up and carry on. That grit, that perseverance, man, it makes all the difference.
God does not call the qualified. He qualifies the called. And I feel called to teach, and I know He will give me those skills that I need to teach effectively.
It will happen. Just be prepared for it. I'm a new teacher. I'm gonna fail. But I have the rest of the year to show that that's not me, that that's just a mistake, and that was just one lesson.
Your first year is definitely a lot more stressful just because you're trying to figure out your routine, you're trying to figure out your schedule, you're trying to figure out this whole new curriculum.
I think having a mentor your first year teaching is so important because you need that outlet that they can feel comfortable talking to, somebody to get advice, somebody to laugh with, cry with.
This is my first year mentoring, so that's been fun too. It's an experience as well where there's things that I forget that I'm like, oh, I probably need to let Renee know about this. She probably has no clue about this, you know? So you almost get into the routine where you just know this is what you do at this time of the year and this is how you handle this situation. So some of those things, it's been interesting for me to reflect back on as a mentor and say, okay, remember you didn't know this before, you know, so.
I give her advice if she has any questions as far as teaching the content, any advice like on classroom management, random questions I guess she might have related to this particular school.
She's really good about coming in even before she wants to meet with parents. That's kind of something that I think a lot of new teachers are unsure about, how to handle that relationship between teacher-parent, and so sometimes she'll come to me and say, okay, so how should I approach this? Even just basic situations in the classroom that maybe she hasn't experienced, you know, just different things that she may not have thought about before.
Today during their encore classes, they talked about bullying. And that's something in the schools we always talk about. Every student hears it a million times, teachers hear it a million times, but today really opened my eyes that it can't be said enough. Today at lunch, a girl dropped something and another student called her the B word, called her fat, and then the student also continued to drop racial slurs throughout the rest of lunch. I had asked the students to write letters to me, and in the final paragraph, I told them that they could just share anything that they wanted to share with Mr. Roth. And one student wrote a paper and it was ripped at the bottom. Well, come to find out, there was a letter found in the auditorium, the original letter that he had written me. He had talked about some of his issues with depression and how lately he has had some suicidal thoughts. And this crushed me. That's something that I battled for so long in my life, and to hear this student tell me that they feel that way, he gave me the ripped up portion of his letter for me to read because he didn't want anybody to find it because his original letter had been found. Of course, parents were contacted immediately. I just hope that they aren't too hard on him because I've been there. And even though we know as adults that you don't need to feel that way, for that middle school child, he feels that way. Even though he wrote about it in a letter and it could just be a cry for help, why would I not respond with full action to that?
Hi, my name is Caleb Roth. I'm from Conway Springs, Kansas. We have a population of about 1,000. We are very religious and football is everything. My graduating class only had 40 kids and we were considered one of the biggest.
It seems the population here is deep-rooted. My parents were here, my grandparents were here. You know, God forbid we leave the tracks, go out of town. I was so proud of my son that he wanted to leave the boundaries of this small town. I always say, go away. You can always come back. This will always be home, but spread your wings. But mainly here, it's people that put their roots here and don't leave.
I might not necessarily come back here myself in my future, but I would never trade my upbringing for anything. I had family on almost every block. I had friends in so many different houses. On any given weekend, I wasn't inside. I was walking down the street to so-and-so's house. I was, running up to the city park and playing with my friends. By the time I got to high school, I was an avid reader. I would go through a book in a day. I was meant to be a teacher. I was constantly taking care of kids, whether it be cousins or my own family. And so I've always had that nurturing mentality. And I actually had a language arts teacher that really, really opened my eyes to how awesome teaching as a profession can be. And it made a difference in my life to have her as my educator. And so I always used to joke that I was going to come back and take her classroom from her. I didn't necessarily fit in at school just because I wasn't like, a farmer. I wasn't somebody that loved to play sports. In this small town, that was something that was more valued.
Our journey together began early. I was, 18 when I had him and going to my first year of college. Everybody stereotypes me. Well, you're gonna be the teenage mom and, your oldest son's just gonna be, the next generation of welfare and I always thought, I hope that he follows in his determination and not living like everybody else does. And he did it, and he continues to prove to everybody that nothing will stop him. Nothing.
Fingers down on page 1. Let's read together, friends. Ready?
This week is kind of a wild one coming up. Our parent-teacher conferences and a field trip. And the most comical thing about it is that the field trip is to the Beach Art Museum on K-State's campus.
Are you excited for the field trip today, guys?
Yeah.
What are you excited about?
About painting art things.
Where are we going?
To the art museum.
I'm not sure what's there for kindergartners, let alone my kindergartners. So, wish us luck.
You see the stars shine brighter. You see the colors that burst into life.
We just left K-State. We went to the Beach Art Museum today for a field trip. Art museums are a challenge for 5-year-olds.
I have officially survived my first field trip as a 5th grade teacher, and I am 100% completely exhausted. I really liked it, but I didn't realize how stressful getting ready for a field trip would be. We had to leave our building by 8:15 and school starts at 8:05, and so it was crazy, but everything went fine. They came home, and the entire way home they couldn't stop talking unless they, were singing Wheels on the Bus as 5th graders.
I highly recommend, if you ever get the chance to go on trips with your students, go anywhere outside of the classroom with your students, do it. Because then you become a real person to them. You are no longer just this figure that stands at the front of the classroom and yells at them. I didn't have to sit there and be like, hey, get to reading. Hey, stop talking. Put that fidget spinner away. You are seen as a human being. They get to see you interact. And those are the days, like yesterday, I got to just kind of hang out and be a normal person with them, and it was just awesome.
In the corner? I don't see it. He's right there. Right there.
Our field trip to the Topeka Zoo, and my mother is joining us with the trip.
They're so big. They're so big, aren't they, Layla?
What we're going to do today is we are going to do the vocab game once again with our remaining words. They don't really tell you how to prepare for parent-teacher conferences. They don't really show you how to be prepared to tell parents that their child needs an IEP or their child needs to be tested. Parents 9 times out of 10 are in there to strictly talk about academics and what are my students' grades? How can they raise them? Even though it's the end of the quarter and it's hard to raise a grade, I found it very beneficial to just have a personal conversation with the parents. Don't see it as, these are the grades, this is how they need to fix them. You just need to go in there and be yourself and be personable. It means the world to parents if you as a teacher show that you know their child.
I thought a lot about how can I make this a good experience for the parents, because this, for a lot of them, is their first child, and so their first parent-teacher conference and their first school conference or anything like that. So I kept trying to tell myself that I have all these numbers and I have all these papers, but none of that really matters. It matters like all the good things I can tell them about their child. So one of the little things I did to try to make it enjoyable and keep me kind of on track, I wrote these little papers for each kid, and it said 3 glows and a grow. So 3 things that glow about their child that like are our favorite thing about them, and then 1 area where they could grow. I started conferences with that, so hoping to open up on a light note, and it seemed to be received very well, and then they can put it on their fridge or something. So I just decided it was better to emphasize the positive a whole lot more right now and kind of pick the biggest area of growth.
I personally loved it because it's a great way to make students take ownership of what they've been doing. So when the parent asks, well, why is all this work missing? The student can't be like, they just haven't graded it yet, or he didn't explain that. Instead, I'm sitting right there, I'm helping them through it, and my student has to be honest because I'm right there, and they know that if they're not honest, I'm going to be honest.
Tomorrow's Halloween. It's on a Monday. That means the entire day is gonna be insane. All the kindergarten teachers, we are dressed up as Mario Kart, and I am Luigi. Then after lunch, it's when it gets really fun. Have a Halloween party. Then we do a parade around the whole school of our costumes.
In honor of Halloween, I did up my door because why not have a little festivity in the classroom?
Halloween is definitely crazy though. You have to be prepared for those sugar high students because the days leading up to it and the days after it are all just discombobulated and crazy because they are eating candy left and right. They're excited to go out and hang out with their friends and do all these fun things. That school is just not a focus, and that was when we saw quite a few behavior issues, but overall it's done, we've survived, and there's not much that went too terribly wrong.
We had a Halloween party, and I was a little anxious to see how this party was going to be because I didn't know if they would still be excited to have a Halloween party or kind of think it was just childish. And they loved it. You know, with a party, I think you just have so much energy in your students, and it's so fun to see that side of them. You know, another piece of advice that I have for all teachers is to just really enjoy those parties with your students, and that is where good relationships are formed with your students, because who doesn't like a party? You know, who doesn't like to do things outside of what you typically do at school?
Friends, we're acting right now like we never came to our circle.
Defiance and misbehavior in my class has become something that I'm used to, and I'm not flustered by it anymore. I'm still leaving school discouraged in some way or another. I kept saying, well, it's gonna get better, it's gonna get better, and every day in some way or another has just been harder.
They are not kidding when they say that you can get burnt out quickly, because I'm feeling burnt out. At first I didn't know what was happening, and now I know that it's burnout. Should be in OneNote right now.
Probably the roughest week that I've had teaching thus far, regarding students as well as parents, and it just put a lot of pressure on me. Just those little things that you know, don't think about until they happen. Just a lot of different parent emails that kind of made me second guess how I was teaching, second guess my grade book, second guess the material that I'm covering and what I'm doing in the classroom.
I'm trying to remain positive about it. I'm giving so much of myself. Like, I'm giving every ounce I can to the point where I'm just exhausted. I'm trying to keep the energy and I'm trying to keep positive, but so much negatives going on right now. Not only just in my life here at school, but in life in general. And it just seems that every turn, there's just more reason for me to like not even bother.
I kind of feel like I'm in that point where nothing that I'm gonna do is gonna be good enough, but I know that that's not true. I mean, I'm the first person to admit that I'm struggling with classroom management and that it'll be a struggle all year long, and there's way more to teaching than just getting up there and teaching the content. And sometimes it's a lot, and sometimes I'm just kind of like, why did I choose to be a teacher? And then I look at those kids and I remember these kids are why I'm here, and that these kids deserve the very best version of me every single day. It may be hard, and it may be really hard some days, and there's some days that you might just not even want to get out of bed, but on the other hand, you know, they're worth it. And I wouldn't have picked another job if I could.
To those people, you know, when you have those rough weeks, to never forget why you're doing this. And to never forget why you teach.
I hope I'm good at survival mode, because I think it's going to become a new normal.